32% of that number is coming from SADC, and that 32% is mostly from rural areas. And what we can also say is that in Africa, in SADC, we are totally reliant on hydropower and coal and other renewables, but then we understand that there is need for that transition now to ensure that we meet the 2050 net zero target, and to ensure that energy is accessible even to the 68% that doesn't have electricity. It is encouraging to note that the SADC part of Africa is well endowed with natural resources like the renewable energy, and those can be utilized to assist that 68% which still doesn't have power. So there's a great opportunity there in that space, and the DRGs could play a greater role to ensure that that remaining percentage is sorted out. There's a challenge currently in the region. There's shortage of power as our installed capacity is 680,000 megawatts. There's a deficit. We need to meet that. We've got shooting population, and we've got a demand that is increasing. So the DRG presents good opportunity. But then in this session today, we want to to try and understand that even though we have these opportunities for the REs, why is it still the case that as the Southern African part, we still have low access to electricity? So the panel that I'm going to call up to the stage will try and unpack as to why is that so. And we hope that with your assistance, we'll be able to come up with a solution that could assist us in ensuring that there's access to everyone, access to electricity to everyone within SADC. May I call upon this team of experts? They're coming from various sectors. Some are coming from government, some are coming from private sector. We have NGOs and yeah. So may I request Mandla Vilagati from Eswatini, who's a senior energy officer, to come up, and we have Taffy, who is a private entity director from Zimbabwe. Can he come up front? Then we have Seraphim, who's coming from Angola. He's working for the Ministry of Energy. And we have Hita from ALEC. Can she also come and join the stage? And we also privileged to have someone from the World Bank who is also part of this panel. Thank you. Can we clap for them as they come? We need to ensure that this session is interactive as possible so that, yeah, we get the best as the SADC region. Thank you. So much, panelists. So that you can unpack us as to maybe why are we still having challenges with the access rates within Africa, Southern Africa. But before we move further, may I request that you introduce yourselves. I'll start with Tefi on my left. If you can tell us about something that you're passionate about, and then you tell us your role in the renewable energy investments, and you also give us more information about Zimbabwe. Just give us an overview.
solar in Zimbabwe. We're an EP. Of all, it restores dignity to the most vulnerable.
I'll also request Mandla to do the same, introduce himself, and then pass it on to Rita. Thank you.
Thank you, Constance. Also appreciate being here today. My name, as said, is Mandla Vilagati. I'm a Principal Energy Officer working under the Department of Energy in the Ministry of Natural Resources and Energy at Eswatini. We are the custodians of our policy and any other operational activities that pertain to energy in the country, and our role is to manage the national energy resources effectively in order to provide sustainable and affordable energy for all citizens of the country. Also passionate about renewables, and by the way, my name Mandla means energy. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rita Maroso, and I'm a project manager at ALER. ALER is a non-profit NGO created in 2014 to promote renewable energy in the African Lusophony countries, so the Portuguese-speaking countries, across all types of technologies and market segments. We have all types of members from the energy ministries in the countries where we operate, as well as consultancy firms, law firms, banks, funds, other associations, as well as universities. Our role is to provide several services to both the public and the private sector in order to maximize the level of information and cooperation to enhance the deployment of renewable energy in those countries. And we do that by knowledge exchange, events, networking, training, consultancy, projects, and even market monitoring. So obviously we are passionate about renewable energy, but renewable energy that can power access to all for energy and enhance gender equality at the same time. Thanks.
Over to you, Seraphim.
Eu vou falar numa língua que provavelmente todos vós, aquilo que é a minha para fazer a tradução.
So Engineer Serafim will speak in Portuguese, and I will help him by translating to English for the benefit of you all.
As minhas sinceras desculpas por esta questão técnica, portanto, mas eu vou me expressar em português, ela me vai apoiar, a minha apresentação vai ser toda em inglês.
So it was just apologizing for it. And this presentation, the slides will be in English, even though we'll be talking in Portuguese, and I will help with the translation.
Obrigado à organização por nos ter convidado a este grandiosíssimo evento.
Says thank you to the organizers for inviting him to come here to this amazing event.
Ter nos dado a oportunidade de energia de Angola, aquilo que são as ações que Angola está a desenvolver neste momento no seu território.
And he will be presenting the opportunities in behalf of the Ministry of Energy of Angola that currently Angola has to offer to everyone.
Portanto, o Ministério da Energia e Águas é um órgão do Executivo Central do Governo. Está encarregue em promover o desenvolvimento dos programas o transporte, produção, transporte e distribuição, de acordo com os seus planos nacionais de desenvolvimento.
So the Ministry of Energy and Water is under the government of Angola, but is in charge of distribution, transportation and production of electricity and works to achieve the targets that are established in the national plans.
Portanto, está encarregue ainda de cumprir e fazer cumprir todos os requisitos para a implementação de programas de melhoria das condições de vida das populações.
So the ministry is in charge of upholding all the projects and programs and actions necessary to give electricity to everyone in Angola.
Também, obviamente, definir políticas que visam a mitigação de perdas técnicas e comerciais, com vista a tornar as empresas do setor financeiramente mais robustas e sustentáveis, em prol ao desenvolvimento socioeconômico do país.
And also to minimize the technical losses and commercial losses of the utilities in the country so they can become strengthened in terms of economic and finance terms, but also sustainable in the long term for the development of the country in the end.
Over to you, Justine.
Thank you, Constance. My name is Justine Beleoken. So first, thank you for the organizer inviting the World Bank, based in Madagascar, but covering also small experience of the bank in Madagascar.
Thank you so much, great panelists, for your introductions. At this point in time, I'd request Seraphim to give us an overview of the status of renewable investment in Angola. A brief presentation. Thank you.
Angola não é exceção no mundo, portanto, em função daquilo que, sob a influência do homem, temos observado as mudanças climáticas. Angola, portanto, está engajada a nível dos seus compromissos ou compromissos internacionais em desenvolver ações que visam, portanto, mitigar a emissão de gases de estufa no planeta. Portanto, em função disso, ela definiu uma estratégia Angola 2025, a qual, portanto, definiu metas, programas, com vista a alternar aquilo que é a sua atividade em termos de produção de energia. Com esta alternância, ela pretende expandir cada vez mais as redes, fazer chegar aos locais mais remotos energia às populações, portanto, tornar o processo de implementação de programas de eletrificação com a intervenção do setor privado, com financiamentos a longo prazo e contribuir de uma forma sustentável, por formas a poder tornar a energia cada vez mais eficiente e sustentável, reduzindo desta forma as perdas de emissões de gases. Portanto.
So it's actually pretty explanatory in the slide, but Angola's aim is to mitigate climate change and the emissions of greenhouse gases, but also increase the rate of electrification into the country. And they can do that by increase the installed power through renewable energies, and at the same time fostering private investments in clean electricity generation through long-term financing, while contributing to the sustainable management of the energy sector.
De acordo com a estratégia definida por Angola, houve a necessidade de desenvolver o Atlas das Energias Renováveis em Angola. Portanto, na identificação dos recursos naturais ou renováveis existentes em Angola, foi possível identificar ou definir que teríamos 4 fontes de energias renováveis a considerar. Seria a biomassa, a água, o vento e o sol. Relativamente à biomassa, nós temos no país uma capacidade de geração de produzir cerca de 3 gigawatts, portanto, instalar 3 gigawatts em Angola. Relativamente à água, foram estudadas as várias bacias hidrográficas do país e identificamos a possibilidade de produzir ou instalar 18 gigawatts para produzir cerca de 72 terawatts-hora. Relativamente ao vento, foram identificados, portanto, na escarpa do ângulo inferior esquerdo de Angola, vemos uma faixa amarela a subir para o norte. Portanto, essas são as zonas de predominância de ventos, que, pelos cálculos feitos, foram obtidos os ventos máximos, portanto, de 5,3 metros por segundo. E, por final, temos o mapa solar, que permite uma radiação entre os 1370 e 2100 kWh por metro quadrado do ano. Portanto, com base nisto, foram desenvolvidas outras ações que falaremos a seguir.
So in order to implement the strategy in Angola and define it, it was necessary to study the availability of the renewable energy resources. As you can see on the slides, they studied the availability for producing energy through biomass, wind, water, and solar. And in terms of biomass, Angola has the capacity to install 3 gigawatts in terms of energy. And then on the wind, which is the map below on the left side, there's still a little bit, even though it's a lesser resource. And you can see the availability is where on the map is painted on yellow, and the average wind speed would be 5.3 meters per second. And water, they did a lot of feasibility studies in various locations, and with the installed capacity of 18 gigawatts, they would be able to produce 72 terawatts hour of energy. And then regarding the solar resources, they have irradiation between 1,370 and 2,100 kilowatt hour per meter per year. Yes, apologies.
De acordo com as capacidades identificadas no país, foram definidas estas metas até 2025. São metas muito ambiciosas, mas é possível alcançá-las, uma vez que contemos com os parceiros que têm-nos batido a porta e estamos aqui mesmo para encontrar ainda mais parceiros.
So these targets are ambitious, but Angola will be able, or is expected to meet them with the help of a diversity of partners that some of them are at the conference as well.
Portanto, se no primeiro gráfico temos aqui a produção a partir de fontes não poluentes. Portanto, nós em 2017 contávamos com cerca de 50%, vamos 40 e poucos por cento de capacidade instalada, que era predominantemente térmica. De 2017 a 2022, tivemos um acréscimo, um incremento na capacidade instalada, mas aqui começou-se já a observar uma certa inversão. Começamos a sair do térmico para a matriz energética de Angola começou a ter um maior pendor a partir das energias renováveis.
So from 2017 to 2022, we can see from these graphics that Angola started to shift from the thermal generation towards renewable generation.
Portanto, e 2025 pretendemos alcançar, obviamente, os 60% de capacidade instalada renovável.
And in 2025, they aim to achieve 60% of renewable sources in terms of installed capacity.
Portanto, até 2025, o objetivo é atingirmos uma capacidade instalada de 7,5 gigawatts. Portanto,
That 60% would then mean that the installed capacity would be 7.5 gigawatts of renewable energy.
e relativamente à produção de energias renováveis a partir do solar, o nosso objetivo é até 2025 atingirmos 800 megawatts.
And until 2025, 800 megawatts just by solar.
Tudo isto é muito bom, é bonito, mas há toda uma necessidade de criarmos condições para a atração do investidor privado. Há toda uma necessidade de garantirmos a regulamentação, a existência de leis que permitam garantir ao investidor segurança, saber para onde vão e como vão praticar o seu negócio com o governo de Angola.
In order to ensure that we achieve this target, it's also important to attract foreign investment, private investment. So it's necessary to have a conducting framework that can attract that private sector.
É assim que nós tínhamos já uma lei de eletricidade em Angola, mas estava desajustada, não fazia referência às energias renováveis. Tivemos que atualizar esta lei, portanto, a lei datava do ano de 96. Em 2015 tivemos que atualizar esta lei, já incluindo uma parte especial referente às energias renováveis.
So the first thing they did, they updated the General Law of Electricity, which the first one dated back to 1996. And then in 2015, when they did the update, they integrated the definition of renewable energy, because before that, even that was not there.
Com base em alguns decretos presidenciais, foi possível nós irmos ajustando outras leis que permitissem, ou que permitem, vamos assim dizer, a atração do investidor privado no setor elétrico de Angola.
And through several presidential decrees, they were able to also regulate part of the sector of renewable energy that can then attract the private sector to Angola.
E aí, obviamente, consideramos os vários intervenientes que podem entrar para o CEP. CEP é o Sistema Elétrico Público de Angola.
And in those presidential decree, it states who can intervene in the public electricity system in Angola. So producers, the single buyers, suppliers, system operator, customers, and other actors that may carry out the activities envisioned.
São mais decretos que vão facilitando a entrada do setor privado, lá onde temos até algumas garantias oferece para a inserção do privado no negócio da energia.
There are also some regulations regarding the provision of a legal regime applicable to state warranties in order to attract more private investing.
Aqui referir que ali onde se vai fazer qualquer investimento tem que se saber o peso da moeda local. Acontece, porém, que o dinheiro de Angola, o Kwanza, denominado Kwanza, não é uma moeda estável. Ela tem observado muitas depreciações ao longo do ano. E isso, de certa forma, também retira todo e qualquer interesse do investidor. Porque quando a moeda num país não é estável, o investimento a ser feito pode durar muito tempo para conhecer o seu retorno. E este não é o objetivo que se pretende. Portanto, o que é que acontece, porém? Nós temos definido uma moeda padrão para os contratos, que é o Kwanza. Mas quando se traz o financiamento de fora, que é moeda estrangeira, depois tem de haver uma compensação do Estado para poder equiparar ao valor que foi trazido a Angola.
So the currency in Angola is the Kwanza, and it is vulnerable to a lot of depreciations throughout the year. So an exchange rate risk is one of the risks that investors may face in Angola, and therefore it was created the law number 10 out of 18 regarding the private investment law that tries to compensate somehow that depreciation, because when investors go to Angola to invest, they obviously want to invest in dollars, the strong currency, and but the investments must be done in Kwanza as well.
Por este facto, temos uma agência criada em Angola, agência de investimento privado, que garante alguns benefícios aí expostos. Portanto, benefícios de natureza de taxas e benefícios de natureza financeira, portanto.
Thank you so much, Seraphim. May I kindly request you to wrap up so that we can try and be on time. Thank you so much. Try and conclude. Thank you. Oh, okay. All right. Conclude. That's great. Thank you. Thank you.
Temos aqui um mapa, mesmo para terminar, temos aqui um mapa dos trabalhos que fizemos já a nível de Angola para a identificação de locais para a inserção de redes, sistemas solares domésticos, portanto, mini-redes, temos tudo identificado, portanto, estamos a estender a rede nacional também até o sul de Angola e, portanto, estamos a fazer alguma coisa. Importa aqui dizer que Angola está aberta aos investidores. Estamos a trabalhar no sentido de podermos fazer mais e melhor na nossa região. Dizer aqui também que este mês de março é um mês muito gratificante para todos nós, porque nós dizemos Março Mulher. Nós tivemos 2 eventos importantes em março. A 10 de março, instalamos o Centro de Energias Renováveis dos países da Comunidade Económica da África Central, a 10 de março. Este centro passa a trabalhar em Angola e hoje, felizmente, nesta data tão significativa, 23/3/23, temos este evento muito rico para todos nós. Obrigado.
So just to wrap things up, so Angola has already made studies the areas for which would be more appropriate to develop projects for grid extension, mini grids, or standalone systems, as you can see in the map in the picture. And just to wrap things up very quickly, Engineer Serafim would like to tell you that Angola is doing its best and will continue to do its best to promote renewable energy systems in the country and to welcome you all to invest there. And I feel March is a very auspicious month because on the 10th of March, the Center for Renewable Energies and Energy Efficiency of the Economic Region of Southern Africa, yes, it was installed in Luanda, the headquarters, and obviously today he has the opportunity to be here and present opportunities in Angola to all of you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Angola, for that presentation. Thank you for the opportunities and the challenge, and just to understand what is happening in the Angolan space. Can we request Mandla Vilagati from Eswatini to give us a brief overview on the country and briefly tell us of the challenges and opportunities that are in Eswatini? Thank you, Mandla.
Moderator. Thank you, Constance. I will just go briefly describe the policy landscape in Eswatini in relation to the opportunities and investment in distributed renewable energies. As mentioned yesterday by my colleague from the utility, Eswatini has quite a high access rate, which is 82, 94 urban and 72 rural. And see on this slide that the red areas are the ones that are not yet electrified in Eswatini. And the graph on the left will show you a typical community that is not yet electrified, which has a population size of about 200, of between 200 and 700 people, spread over an area of 0.5 and 13 kilometers per square meter. And most of that demand, it comes from households. And the typical consumption of a household is about 4 kilowatt hours. And it is important to note at this point that all these areas are quite close to the grid. And it is important to note that in future, the grid will reach these areas. And then in terms of the enabling environment or the policy that guides the development of the sector in Eswatini, we are guided by the Electricity Act, which has reformed and consolidated the laws that regulate the electricity supply industry in the country. And this act actually liberalized the electricity supply industry to allow for the participation of the private sector. We also have the Energy Regulatory Act that established the authority which administers the act. And we have the Electricity Company Act, which provides for the establishment of the utility that performs the functions of the electricity supply industry. We have the National Energy Policy, which outlines the principles that the country should follow to meet the energy needs in a sustainable manner and sets out the targets of 50% in the generation mix, and we hope to achieve universal access by 2030 to promote socio-economic development. Other policies or instruments that we have an independent power policy that guides the establishment of an enabling environment to promote sustainable renewable energy and private sector participation. And this also enables the deployment of embedded generation and the mini-grid solutions to increase energy access. We also have developed guidelines. We have small-scale embedded generation guidelines or framework that provides for the rules that govern the regulation of embedded generation. We have mini-grid and micro-grid guidelines that outlines the processes to be followed when developing mini-grids in the country. In terms of key barriers, what we have seen is that as we have quite a high access rate, It is becoming quite expensive for the utility to extend the grid. We have realized that we lack a comprehensive plan that specifies targets for on-grid and off-grid solutions, as well as an absence of off-grid electrification implementation strategy. We have observed that we have a low private sector participation in the power generation due to low demand for electricity in these areas. We have noticed also that we need to mainstream gender issues. We have lack of local financing for renewable energy solutions, limited skills in terms of developing and operating DRE systems, as well as limited skills in terms of renewable energy in the local market. But as you know, when there are challenges, there are opportunities, and opportunities exist in Eswatini in that we could encourage productive uses of DRE, considering sectors such as health and agriculture to increase the demand for electricity and make off-grid systems viable. And we require provision of blended finance instruments to unlock local funding and use national development banks and financial institutions to promote DRE. And lastly, we wish to formulate options of rural electrification that are based on providing livelihood options that will incorporate women in respect of value chain for jobs, green jobs, development of enterprises, and addressing poverty and the food, water, and health nexus, for which the responsibility is assumed by women.
Thank you so much, Mandla, for that overview. Can we have the bank give us an overview also of the opportunities and challenges? We do appreciate what some of the countries in SADC have in terms of opportunities and challenges. Can we also get a brief presentation from the bank where they'll be presenting opportunities and giving us an overview of how they are assisting on the renewable energy space?
Okay. Regarding focus on what we do actually in point is to mention that as during the previous presentation, so also in terms of investment in apart from Ethiopia, Uganda, and Kenya, which are the champion now with rates, we can see that for Southern Africa, there are a lot to be done. First, a request to go with an integrated approach, which means that developing grid, but also off-grid solution. And for Madagascar, I think that to catch up with this, it is important also in terms of business model, develop the investment in off-grids. Key issues in off-grid electrification will be actually to be able to increase the penetration rate with quality and sizable off-grid systems. Also expanding geographic coverage within the country. Actually, the affordability issues is a very important point. The question is how to create a market in such a country where actually there is an also very I think that we should focus on several levers in order to have an affordable market price and at the same time increase the willingness to pay. And also by for that, the bank as the agencies come with several approach, an holistic approach that combines more one public funding mechanism with other interventions. Also, RBF, result-based finance. To provide credit line and risk mitigation instruments. Subsidies, so it is important to have in order to know exactly what could we bring and how the points are first kind of energy also coordinate with all the stakeholders and mobilize. In the case of Madagascar, what we did strategic the strategic planning, so it was the LCDP, the law also financing the geospatial program, and it is also important to bring the development, also the private sector, in order to define a common what we did. But in Madagascar, we come with two important programs. The first one, after having after setting the planning and the strategic instrument, the second step was to go with a pilot in terms of project in 2017, 150 project to promote grid, but also off-grid solution. And one of the innovation was to set a kind of market, off-grid market development fund of 40 million, which actually was between private sector and also public sector. It was a way to channeling the fund via private sector management to operators in order to develop the market. So invest in electrification of health centers. 500 health centers were electrified by this program, and in terms of opportunity, we have private sector involved in O&M, but also in digitalization. Once we finish with the pilot phases, the next step is what we are currently doing today. Approach after the pilot, and now we are launching a 400 million program in Madagascar, which 7%. Solar home system. also electrifying 100% of the health centers and 7 to come regarding the mini-grid to more than 30 mini-grids actually owned by the utility. And the rehabilitation, and we will work with the regulatory, the Rural Electrification Agency to electrify more than 150 villages with the funds manager that will be in place. And very quickly, that is the new program we will put in place that I just also important to mention that with that, with capacity building, with support, and one of the main to have a kind of nexus services for schools and health centers, energy and digital services for households, and energy and digital services for rural communities. What actually we will do is to find for the public, the state-owned entity, is to open the market by 32 mini-grids. So I think that the idea here will be with 40 million investment to be owned by the public entity to move to affermage or a kind of for the Rural Electrification Agency, where I was of mini-grid existing, but which working because of the financial sustainability of the model. Project will actually finance or we will move for a project of 40 million launch in 2027. Here will be to highly subsidize the kits in order to reduce the gap, the affordability gap, and that will public institution. Here, I would say, on the pilot we have done in the previous project, we aim to of 1,000 health center and 2,000 schools, and I think that there again there is an opportunity for private sector to jump in with operation and maintenance that will.
Thank you so much, Justin, and everyone for the overview that you have given. We understand that there's been ambitious targets that have been set. We have a legal framework in place. The bank is providing some support financially. We can see they can assist on rural electrification. and even on the grid. But now we just want to appreciate, we have all this in place. What are the challenges that are faced by developers, say in Zimbabwe? If you can give us an overview, Taffy.
Yeah. I think when you look at certain areas that have been highlighted by my colleagues, was to have long-term loans at a good price. So I think it's been highlighted throughout the conference, the differences, the risks in Forex and all that. But I think if, and you find that sometimes the development is shelved because the doesn't quite accommodate what it wants to do. So we end organizations that are happy with that risk. You find that EEP Africa came in, the risk appetite was just right, the timing was just right, and they were happy to carry this for that period. While in the process of doing that, the African Enterprise Challenge Fund, AECF, then realized this was scalable within reason, so forth, and they've also jumped on board. Now we get to terms of real capital to scale. Conversations a couple of days ago that the larger the ticket price, the larger the ticket price, the higher the risk, it seems. With and finally, I think one that's being addressed, I think the big buzzword at the moment is technical assistance. More of that is
Can we get an NGO perspective?
Thank you, Constance. I think that, and now speaking for the Portuguese-speaking countries where we operate, low electrification rates below 50% would mean a huge market potential. So why isn't the private sector more involved there or more attracted? I think one key issue is we still need to ensure a more clear and favorable policy framework that can attract the private sector. The sector sometimes is still driven by cooperation partners, and it's needed to strengthen the institutional capacities. They have limited staff sometimes, so we need to do that. And one good example, actually, it was in Mozambique, where cooperation partners helped with the creation of AREN, which is the energy regulator agency that now can operate as its own. So, and examples of that was the the auction process they have created so far and the off-grid regulation. And I think another thing is tariffs, actually. And it was not spoken yet. Maybe I'll be lifting a vulnerable point. But if you still have non-cost reflective or uniform tariffs, it's difficult then to attract the private sector. It's needed to have cost reflective tariffs, or at least study the difference between the tariffs you already have now and the cost reflective ones, and then analyze the viability gap that you still need to cover to attract then the private sector and build the correct business models together with financiers, donors, etc. And when talking about just a little bit more about solar home systems in some countries, the equipment's price is impacted by the taxes or import duties that apply to those types of equipment. So if there are incentives to decrease those taxes or import duties, then obviously we can increase the market potential and drive the private sector even further there.
Thank you so much, Rita, for that. Can we find out from the bank as to, they've got the finances out there to promote the renewables. Why is there slow uptake of the funds, and why is that then affecting the penetration rates in SADC?
Okay, thank you. I think that there are many will be communication awareness campaign. That the public sector, which sector it's where, for example, in SADC, in 80% of the population under. So I think that it is important also to invest with all the stakeholders to be on the same.
Thank you so much, a great panelist. I think it is time that we invite questions from the participants in the house. Yes.
Je viens de monter la ronde précédente. Alors, je ne sais pas une question. Avec l'expérience camerounaise, des agences, n'est-ce pas, des génies renouvelables des pays. Ça fonctionnait, même si il y avait des facteurs bloquants. J'aimerais savoir si ce fonds existe toujours. Oh, dans quelle partie de l'Afrique vous l'implémentez? Parce que je pense qu'en Afrique, au Cameroun, particulièrement,
Yes, please, Justin.
Merci pour la question. Effectivement, pour parler du fonds, des différents acteurs. Ça a marché dans un premier temps, mais ça n'a pas marché aussi qu'on l'espérait. Et finalement, je pense qu'une partie de ce financement a été annulée parce qu'il y a eu un manque d'appropriation. L'idée qui a été celle du gouvernement en relation avec... Aujourd'hui, on n'a plus, à ce que je sache, je ne couvre pas tous les pays, mais on n'a plus le fonds d'électrification rurale tel quel en Afrique centrale et même en Afrique australe. La banque intervient, par exemple, à Madagascar, pour la mise en place de ce qu'on appelle le FNED, le sera un outil utilisé par le gouvernement et avec éventuellement la participation de plusieurs acteurs. Et l'idée, pour répondre à cette question, à ce point, c'est qu'il faut vraiment qu'il y ait une appropriation et il faut une gestion qui soit la plus saine possible. Alors, ce que nous avons fait dans le cas de Madagascar, par exemple, c'est ce que j'ai présenté peut-être tout à l'heure assez rapidement. On est en charge d'un fonds de 40 millions de dollars pour développer le secteur. Mais on a recruté de façon compétitive. Et donc, cette entreprise répond au ministère de l'Énergie. Ce fonds donc, est en réalité l'intermédiaire entre le secteur privé et le gouvernement. Et donc, cette entreprise a la capacité de pouvoir allouer des fonds, que ce soit aux petites entreprises qui veulent se développer dans le secteur, des critères, des indicateurs de rendement sur les 40 millions de dollars qui ont été lancés pour 300 000 kits solaires. On est
Thank you so much, Justin, and that question. Due to the interest of time, we need to wrap up. I'd like to request this wonderful panel to give some closing thoughts or take home to every one of us who's here. Sorry, we've got time constraints. Over to you, Justin, just some closing.
Thank you, Constance. As I just told, I think that it is really important to point as think it is also important to promote and to
Over to you. Over to you.
Em toda e qualquer relação que inicia, de qualquer relação que inicia, portanto, há muita dificuldade. Com as empresas, com as entidades que relacionaram-se conosco. As razões, por variedíssimas razões, portanto, por falta de leis, por falta de uma tarifa. Hoje, nós em Angola, infelizmente, de certa forma, dificulta ou melhor, negociamos com algumas entidades fotovoltaicos em Angola, tivemos muitas dificuldades, mas felizmente nós estamos em fase de poder ser inaugurada nos próximos dias com uma capacidade de 25%, isto na região sul, onde temos o maior déficit. Portanto, a parceria pública.
So in the beginning,
Yeah, you can go ahead, Hirsa, and make your closing remarks. Yes, thank you.
so what Mr. Silveira just said is that in the beginning of every relationships, there are hardships that you need to overcome. And Angola certainly has his. The uniform tariffs is one of them, but through public and private partnerships, Angola has been able to establish contracts to install PV centrals. One of the four is going to be is already being installed and will be finished very, very soon. So obviously there's always hardships, but there is always a way forward. It's a matter of everyone working together.
Thank you. What are your
And
closing?
to build on that, I think everyone has a role to play. Obviously, the public sector, the private sector, the associations. So it's important to have clear roadmaps towards the electrification and access to energy for all. Whether it is via IPPs, mini-grids, or standalone systems, we can all work together to achieve that goal. And in the Portuguese-speaking countries, ALER is there to work with you. That's it.
Thank you. Mandla, your parting shot.
I also agree with the previous speakers. We need to have meaningful discussions between all parties, that is policymakers, developers, financiers, and in particular we need to leverage on blended finance to unlock local financing to support the.
Yes, Tafi.
Thank you. I would just like to thank everybody that's in the room that attended this conference. I'm so excited to see the likes of Schneider getting involved on the developmental side of things, getting involved in actually dealing with the issues rather than just selling a product. As Chris from Sunfunder said yesterday, it's a puzzle. And as long as we remain interested in the puzzle and find the pieces, we can certainly make it work.
Together we can all do this, and surely we need to act now. Thank you so much, everyone. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you, great panelists. Yeah, thank you. And bye from us.